What attracted you to Morgan State?
So I'm Catholic. I'm very involved in my Catholic faith. I go to church, and I'm a Eucharistic minister for the Catholic Church, and that means I serve communion. I'm able to serve communion. So I'm involved in my Catholic faith, and I got divorced from Morgan Carty's mom in 2014, and around that time, their mom and Morgan and Carly moved from Indiana. We were living in Indiana at the time to Pennsylvania, where I live now. And so for about 5 years, so from about 2014, 15 to 2020, I fathered from 600 miles away. So once a month for 5 years, I either drove or flew from South Bend, Indiana to Pennsylvania to be with my daughter. Certainly, as you and anyone can imagine, whether a parent or not, you can imagine, right? Anyone that it was difficult. This is why I really highlight the resiliency of Morgan and Carly. And so, for 5 years, I certainly contemplated, moving home. I wanted to be with my daughters, but as my daughters knew, I didn't just have a job that I could pick up and leave, right? I work at a school of social work, but my specialty is addiction and mental health counseling, and then racial disparities within the criminal justice system and criminal justice reform. So it's pretty specific. And not every school of social work is hiring, not every school of social work is looking for someone that does what I do. So for 5 years, I fathered from 600 miles away, saw my daughters about once a month. Never missed a month. Once a month, was here for, maybe 4 to 7 days and spent time with my daughters. And this was December or January. So December of 2019, January of 2020. And this is why I shared about my Catholic faith earlier. I left church. Sunday night, was driving home to my apartment. And I had this thought, John, you're moving home. It's time to be with your daughters. And I was overwhelmed with this sense of peace. I drove to TGI Fridays in South Bend, Indiana, ordered an appetizer and a beer. I texted my boss at Indiana University, the associate dean, great boss, great school of social work. And I said, let's touch base soon. I'm going home to be with my daughters. And the associate dean, Indiana University, again, school is a beautiful place to work. I loved working there. They knew that I fathered from so many miles away. They knew once a month I was gone, so on and so forth. They were very supportive. And Beth, my friend and boss at the time, said, we support you. And this is unlike me because I don't just quit jobs without having something else lined up, right? And it's not like I quit. I said, I'm going to finish out the semester. So I let Indiana University know in December or early January of 2020 that I was leaving. I had no job lined up. I just knew I had no anxiety, which is unlike me. And I was full of peace. I'm going home to be with my girls. It's been too long. And then the pandemic hit in March of 2020. So all this was decided before the pandemic even hit. Indiana University, the pandemic, if we can draw anything positive from it, of course, I didn't want to minimize, obviously, the devastating consequences, hurt and death that came from it. But I was able to continue working at Indiana University because the pandemic hit. I was now living in my parents' basement, right, as I moved home to Pennsylvania. But I was closer to my daughters and was able to see them, obviously more than once a month. So I'm home. The pandemic's going on. I'm like, well, ain't no one going to be hiring during the pandemic. And, Indiana University they knew I was living in Pennsylvania. Again, they were very supportive. I was still working with them. And they even said to the point, hey, we'll work with you until you find another job. So I went on a website, a social work, website, and I saw that Morgan State University in Baltimore, not far from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, where I live now, was hiring. And they were looking for someone who has expertise in addiction counseling, check, and it being an HBCU, who has some understanding of HBCUs, some interest to address criminal justice reform issues, or like my research on best practices in serving African Americans in treatment courts. And so it was in my mind, and again, it's either a coincidence that all this worked out, and I certainly would respect people's views on that, and very well may be. In my eyes, it was definitely God, my faith working in my life, because I would never say I'm leaving this job. And I loved Indiana University. I still love them. It's a great place to work. And going home with no game plan and not feel anxiety, but I felt none. I had thoughts. How am I going to play? I felt peace. And so I applied to Morgan State University. The pandemic was full, it was full force. I applied during 2020. I did interviews all virtually through 2020, and then was offered the job, said absolutely. And I started in January of 2021, about 2 years ago. And all of this, Indiana University, my former employer, supported me. They said, well, we will allow you to continue working for us. We want you virtually until you start at Morgan State. And then if you start in January, then we'll end your contract then. And it has just been a blessing beyond what I could imagine of the gifts that I have received by working at an HBCU. Working at an HBCU, the avenues and paths that it has set up for me to continue doing my research agenda, to reach more people, to have a greater impact. But not alone, to be able to surround myself with colleagues and students who have the same passion and desire for criminal justice reform as I have. And it's contagious. And I mean, the HBCU culture is contagious. I was in Nashville this summer doing a training at a conference. It's called the NADCP, National Association of Drug Court Professionals. So criminal justice reform conference, there's 8,000 people there. I'm speaking at one of my presentations, very large conference. And I say, I'm from Morgan State University, historically Black university in Baltimore, Maryland. Someone from the audience yells out, shout out to HBCUs. I say, yeah, I'm in Seattle, Washington. A few months ago, October of 2022, just a few months ago, I'm in Seattle, Washington. And I say, I work at Morgan State University. Someone from the audience, shout out to HBCUs, right? And she said, the HBCU, I forget it, that she went to. I had someone from Oklahoma wanted to do a local news story. This would have been in Oklahoma. We would have done it virtually on depression. And she gave a shout out to HBCUs. So when it comes to the HBCU culture, I'm a rookie, right? I'm learning all this, but it's beautiful that I've found that everywhere I go, Nashville, Tennessee, Seattle, Washington, Oklahoma, a journalist, local news reporter, right? Very proud of being part of an HBCU. And I see the proudness in them. But now, and I'm still a rookie, but now I'm starting to learn and see where that comes from. Because there's a lot to be proud about, meaning I thought I could have real, candid, honest conversations about race and racism. I thought I could, right? I mean, I thought I could be open and honest and share my experiences and learn others' experiences, and just have a dialogue about race. I thought I could, until I came to Morgan State University and met the students. And not that at Indiana University, trust me, we have conversations about race. But it wasn't until I've come to an HBCU and meeting with the faculty and the students and the norms at Morgan State University that I was able to say, wow, I got a lot more to learn. Not that I thought I knew it all. Trust me, I didn't. But I have a lot more to learn about having conversations about race and racism. And it's fun to be able to learn and have those conversations. It's humbling to be able to say, hey, I'm the professor and I teach and I have this certain area of expertise in addiction, mental health, and addiction is a brain disease. I can teach it now. And I have my experiences with working with race and ethnicity within the criminal justice system. I'm comfortable sharing that. But we have real conversations. And a lot of those conversations, we student-led. They're telling me their lived experiences growing up in urban communities, their lived experiences with racism, their lived experiences growing up in Baltimore and other areas that we serve. So the path to Morgan State is, in my mind, a very spiritual path where I believe personally in my life, God has called me to serve. And it has just been a humbling experience, an exciting experience. And so I'm still absorbing it, and I'm 2 years in. I really am. I remember the very first meeting I went to at Morgan State. So this would have been January of 2021. The very first meeting was the president, our president, Wilson, the president of Morgan State University, just giving an opening discussion and lecture to the faculty and staff of the start of the spring 2021 semester. And he said, and I'm paraphrasing, but recently there were bomb threats to HBCUs. And if I recall correctly, Morgan State University was one of them. And I sat back, and it's my very first kind of interaction with the university besides the hiring process. And I just, it was a new experience to me. We didn't have that at Indiana University, right? We didn't have people projecting hate onto the school. We didn't have people calling in bomb threats because it's a historically Black university. And for me, it was just so, it brought tears to my eyes, because although I work in the area of race, there's so much that I have just been, naive to, right? And it isn't until you're open and honest with others about that, such as my students, that boy, once you're open and honest and just genuine, here's me, here's my experience, where I come from, the floodgates open of knowledge and experience.
Yeah.
It's been a beautiful experience that I honestly am still absorbing all of it.